Just this morning, Senator Rubio, Senator Burr and I were at a hearing which dealt with the educational problems facing veterans who come back from the battlefield and they go to college, and there are problems there. And what most of us think is that veterans should be able to take advantage of in-state tuition in the state in which they are living. Sexual assault has been a very serious problem in the military. We want the VA to do better than that, et cetera, et cetera. So, Madam President, I am very glad that my Republican friends, virtually all of them, and I want to thank Senator Heller and Senator Moran for voting for this bill, along with every Democrat. But I'm very glad that my Republican colleagues are now beginning to focus on veterans' issues. And we need to step up to the plate to help not only our veterans but their families. And that's the legislation that I have authored. So what I say to Senator Rubio, your legislation has many important provisions which I happen to agree with. There are some that I think need work on, and we are going to hold a hearing on that legislation and other legislation in early June. So I respectfully object to that legislation right now, but I would ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to calendar number 297 S-1950 with the Sanders Amendment, which is at the desk and is the text of S-1982, the Comprehensive Veterans Health and Benefits and Military Retirement Pay Restoration Act. That is the comprehensive legislation supported by virtually every veterans organization in the country, millions of veterans and the American people, and says thank you to the veterans who put their lives on the line to defend this country. We're going to be there for you. So I would ask that this legislation be passed and would ask unanimous consent that that happen.
Madam President.
Objection is heard to the request from the senator from Florida. Is there objection?
Madam President.
Senator from Florida.
Reserving the right to object, I wanted to address a couple of points. The first is on the issue of politicizing this. I agree. In fact, that's why, for example, I haven't come forward and said, let the Secretary resign. I think sometimes in this process there are times when that's important. There are people that are clearly not doing their job, appointed by the President, and it is our job as overseers of the executive branch and of government to step forward and say that. I've actually said, let's give the Secretary a chance to see what happens here. I may end up asking for his resignation at some point here as more information comes out, but at a minimum, I think he deserves the opportunity, and his successors, whoever that may be, deserve the opportunity to hold the people underneath them accountable. They don't have the power to do that now. Also notice how I came to the floor here today. I've said absolutely nothing in a partisan nature. I'm not claiming that this is a crisis created by Democrats or from another party. On the contrary, I said this is an issue that's had strong bipartisan support in the House, this solution, and strong bipartisan support in the committee today. Now, this issue may become politicized in the sense that it seems that all of the reluctance to move forward on it is coming from one side of the equation, but that does not necessarily have to be. In fact, I would tell you right now that I believe that if this came to a vote, the overwhelming majority of the members of the majority would support this legislation that I've put forward today. Two other points that were raised, that there's been no hearings on this. I would respectfully disagree. There was a hearing on it today. This was offered. This specific language was offered in a committee, and with little debate and no dissent, it passed by voice vote. For those watching at home, here's what voice vote means. They don't even call a roll. They basically tell members, is anyone against this? No one said they were. This language was adopted today in a committee. Here's my second problem. I am glad to hear that there are going to be hearings with regards to this issue. And I think that's important, because I'm not claiming that the bill that I'm asking us to take up today and pass would solve all of the problems. There are still serious systemic problems within that agency. And a hearing needs to address that and find responsible solutions to those problems. So a hearing is called for. What I'm asking for is a very simple thing. Give the Secretary, appointed by a president of a party different than my own, give the Secretary the power to fire employees underneath him that are not doing their jobs, so that they know that they're being held accountable. That's all I'm asking here. That's all this bill does. It's that straightforward. And I don't think that any of us want to go home for the Memorial Day recess, and when we're asked, what are you doing on this issue? Our answer is, well, in about 15 days, we're going to have a hearing on this crisis. Meanwhile, the list goes on and on of the outrages that are coming out of this agency. Every single day, more cases are coming out of veterans that are not being treated fairly, appropriately, and in some cases, in my opinion, criminally, by this incompetence that we see out of some in the Veterans Administration. This is a matter of urgency, because while we are gone on our recess, the President next week is going to get a report, a preliminary report on what's going on. And it may very well be that he wants to see some people fired. And it may very well be that the Secretary will want to fire some people in senior executive positions, and he will not be able to do that. And all I'm asking is not to give us the power to fire them, but to give the administration the power to fire them and hold them accountable. So that's, and as far as the bill that the chairman has offered here, this bill's already been debated, and there are problems with this bill. It is an extensive piece of legislation. It has many good elements in it. It also has a cost issue at a time when our nation owes close to $18 trillion. And that was the reason why so many on my side of the aisle objected to it. And that's why I would object to the motion made here today by the senator from Vermont.